and welcome to the 66 RPG Think Tank, where we brainstorm lots of RPG ideas. Tonight we're going to be talking about cool spells for wizards. What's going to be good, what's interesting, what's characterful. Doesn't matter how powerful, it doesn't matter how silly or useful they are. We just want spells which sort of say wizard to you. But we're going to come to that in a few moments. First, we're going to do some check-ins. Kieran, would you like to run us through the check-ins?
Absolutely, Chris. In fact, I was going to start off with myself to make it really simple. I've been on night shift work during the meetings for the last 2 or 3 weeks, why I haven't been here, but I'm finally back here. Nice to be back around with my friends and back involved in the meeting, get my head in the game. Other than that, not really all that much. In that case, moving on to the person I've not actually met before. So, Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing alright, actually. I've a week spent trying to get work, and I seem to have maybe got work selling chainsaws, so it's an interesting an interesting job to get. Well, chainsaws and a variety of other things, but I just like to say that first one.
That's definitely a weird job after all, but can't really blame me. I think I'd go for that when I have the choice at the moment. Mark, how have you been?
Not a great week, all told. Made some silly mistakes at work, but we'll get all that back together again next week and make up for lost time. Yeah, so, wonderful.
Yeah, we all have bad weeks eventually. Often. Joshua, how you doing, matey?
I'm not bad. Started off fantastic. I spent most of Monday doing absolutely nothing, but hey, I love getting bank holidays off. However, I then paid for it with the next 4 days being absolutely awful at work. It's like some of the worst days I've had at work since the 3 years I've been there, but I'm not going to go into that now. Other than that, yeah, not too bad, all things considered. Just wish it stopped raining.
Okay, and Jay, how about yourself?
Yeah, work. I had a 3-day week because I'm a civil servant, so I got Tuesday off as well. So mostly, not a lot. I've had a 3-day week. It's been busy, but not necessarily very interesting.
Well, that happens to all of us eventually. And of course, Chris, finally.
Well, I'll break the trend and say I had a good week. I actually I had two whole days off. I took the bank holiday off and I took the Tuesday off as well. So that was a good start to the week. And then the rest of the week has been mostly getting the final PDFs ready, just tweaking a few bits and replacing a few images which didn't work on the proof copies, and so they're just sort of going off. So we're just slowly creeping and crawling towards the finish line.
Okay then. Looks like we're all sort of updated and all checked in. So one thing would meant under my thing. I've actually had 3 days off this week because the way my work's been scheduled, but I am working for the next 4 days straight, including the weekend. I hate my life. But in the meantime, that's the old check-ins all done. So, shall I move on to Josh involving his Reddit post and the comments therein?
So, to sum up, Reddit just exploded for us. There's no word for this. I mean, due to some technical difficulties, I could only put this thread up at about, I think it was about 1:30, due to my phone's internet not working and other technical difficulties. So we put it up at 1:30, promoted it, and hey, we have, once we finally refresh it, come on, refresh, a grand total of 26 upvotes and 30 comments, which was amazing. This is the best result yet, and I can only hope it gets better from here on in. So, as I think we discussed in the introduction, this week's theme is magic, spells, incantations, shamanism. You made it, we're putting it in there. So, we put this thread on Reddit, Google+, and Facebook. So we'll start with Reddit, really, as we got the most results. I would like to start with what Chris has come up with. Has noticed. Summon Spice.
Yes, this is from a Critical Geek. Spell's called Summon Spice, and he's only done a very brief comment on it. Yeah, Summon Spice, incredibly handy. Just think about what you can do with Cloud of Pepper. Not to mention your culinary friends will love you. And I like this idea because on the face of it, it's really silly. You know, it's just like a way of having salt and pepper to put on your in your food, or a bit of chili as you sort of do the camp cooking. But it has a lot of things. You know, Cloud of Pepper. It's an offensive attack. You know, we call it pepper spray. But it got me thinking, and this is what I really liked about the idea: is actually, could you do a whole food-based or sort of like summon weirdness option for a character? I just love the idea of a wizard who's a really good cook and uses the magic as part of their cooking. And you know, so you know, 1 minute he's killing monsters with summon spice, and the next thing he's flavouring his dinner. Just really love that idea.
I really... The possibilities are endless. I mean, what if you summon saffron and sell it? I mean, that could in theory sell for a lot of gold. But not only that, mace, as you said, pepper spray. Mace is also, as far as I'm aware, some form of herb or seasoning. That way you can use mace spray as well. I think that's the right thing to say. In theory, very adaptable, very potentially quite dangerous low-level spell. Or even high-level, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you can sort of combine it with, of course, lots of, you know, you split it out to sort of like whole character class into things like herbs and other sort of culinary implements and tools. You know, you've got healing herbs, you've got herbs which have, you know, particular effects, you've got drugs, you know, so there's quite a lot of potential, I think, for quite an interesting character pack for a wizard cook.
Fantastic. So I'm going to move now on to Jay, who seems to have gone for an octopus in a jar.
Yep, I have indeed. Mostly because I picked the weirdest one on the list. But Octopus in a Jar is originally flagged up by Hono, or Hono, and a couple of people commented on this, Lord Bofu, Chief of Mind, and this, talking about the idea of, well, what actually can you get out of this? Now, they directly think about it, essentially, it's an octopus grenade. So essentially you get your octopus in a jar, you summon it, you hurl it at the enemy, and the octopus immediately grapples whatever you happen to be targeting. Pretty useful, if more than anything else, yeah, pretty useful, and more than a little bit amusing. It's like, just that slightly bizarre what the hell factor. But it's yeah, so that's quite interesting.
I did quite like that. That amused me immensely when I first saw it. It's the idea of just having this little jar, ping, octopus inside it, and then throwing it. And the enemy see this little jar flying towards them. So what's that inside it? Boom, tentacles everywhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be a small octopus. It could be a gargantuan one if you got to high enough levels, I suppose.
Yeah, but it generalizes on from this into ideas about how you can think about basically creative ways you can use your summons. Now, Chris was previously talking about particularly just about summoning food materials. This one is like, well, you've got the idea of animal companion summoning, and an awful lot of Pathfinder mentalities, you throw them into a fight as a temporary flanking bonus. Well, actually, what this kind of talks about, well, actually, there are more things you can do with the summon. There are more problems you can solve by bringing in an animal companion to a particular situation, be it putting it in a jar and throwing an enemy, or being it summoning a bat to use echolocation, being it summoning some kind of other creature, an owl or something, and asking it questions. Yes, these kind of things. It's quite interesting ways you can do this kind of thing. So I think a good and inventive use of summoning animal companions or animal summons is what I'd like to take out of this one, a novel use of it, particularly out of combat.
Especially because most of especially summon monster and summon nature's ally spells traditionally are for combat. You summon like a crocodile or a I'm trying to think of the list now. Even place summoners most of the time, or a bear, which go simple. They're combat. You don't get a bear in and out of combat situation. That's just silly and impractical. But if you say summon a bat to use echolocation to find enemies in the dark, oh yeah, as Chris is right, but summon guide dog. So it's very multi-purpose depending on how the player wants to use it. So I believe Kieran had the Mage Blade spell in mind.
Ah, yes, the Mage Blade, done by Party Moses. It was just an idea of going through it where you saw a player using a spell called that. It was the idea of having a Mage Hand's limitation, so you can't actually injure someone badly, but could do something, a few little light nicks, little cuts here that could be used as a tool by thieves and stuff, cutting purses or like cutting bowstrings, things like that, as well as a tool for lockpicking. And it's a really interesting idea, sort of looking at building a multi-purpose utility spell that can do a variety of things that aren't too damaging or too combat-based, but can be used from both directions. And it kind of reminds me of what I've seen recently in the 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. Because I've been looking into that recently, and one of the things they have in there is a spellcasting rogue. They can sort of become that 3rd level, and one of the spells they get is a modified version of Mage Hand that they can use to pick pockets and pick blocks and disarm traps at range. Specifically as an extra feat they get on top of that. So the idea of sort of having more wider variety of utility spells and something a bit more flexibility, a bit more play, I always liked that kind of idea, and that was one of the ones that stuck out straight to me when I saw it through the list, along with Summon Spice, but moving on from that.
I'm noticing a theme that people like a vague description that allows a lot of flexibility around it. So all of them, the Summon Octopus or Summon X creature here, Summon Spice, and Mage Blade can be used to different effects. It's not just, oh, it does this. It's not static. It allows people for access to greater role-playing possibilities, say, rather than, oh, you do this. That's it. You don't do anything else. I believe that Kieran has something else to say about this.
Yeah, about that thing about the theme idea we were just bringing up. I think what it is if you look at combat spells, they're very much, they do their job, they burn, they do effects, that's what they're supposed to do. But a lot of games that have spellcasters, whether it's sorcerers or clerics and stuff, they're very focused, very direct spells that have very little inflexibility in there. And a lot of role players love to sort of play around what they can do with the spell and mess around with it, sort of do new and interesting things. And I remember when very early on running the Savage Island adventure, one of the spellcasters there, one of the games I ran at a con, was the Arcane Archer, and he wanted to use the core aspect of the Arcane Archer to make a flare effect, sort of draw in rescue ships. And it wasn't really a spell for it, but it was a creative way of using that to make an arcane flash, sort of in a flare motif, and that was an inventive way of using something that had no real generalized description. And role players love that kind of thing more than having really focused, really down to the grip mechanical skills.
So going very back onto the Arcane Archer, with the idea of infusing an arrow with an anti-magic field and then firing it into a mage. Mage can't use spells because wherever he's walking, he's now got an anti-magic field around him. Again, we're finding ways around things.
Exactly.
So the chat's gone very, very squiggly in my eyes. I believe Alex has something to say as well.
No, it's just continuing with the thing that was being said, that trying to work around the supposed restrictions of these small utility spells often does lead to the really good opportunities for extra role-playing, which is probably why it does come up a lot for the people who want to do it. There's also always, you can go on things and have the story afterwards of how you use this spell to do a fun thing, and general bragging rights of being able to figure out ways around supposedly useless spells.
Mm-hmm. So, Mark, dodge.
Sword and Board on the Reddit forum had a very nice idea. Well, not ideas. He came up with a very referencing a very nice one, which was the Sidereal Dodge Charm. So this is a spell or an ability which allows you to essentially delete yourself from a scene of the game. Everybody else remembers that you weren't there, and everything else kind of plays out reasonably well without you being there, and then you reappear off somewhere else with your own memory of what truly happened. And I quite like that for a number of reasons. It's a very big scale kind of spell, because it's actually it's trying to work out use the word meta in this thing, but you actually directly use the spell to directly manipulate the narrative rather than manipulating the world which the narrative is describing. You go, okay, well I wasn't in the scene at all, bang, gone. It's all gone wrong. You can it kind of takes you a step outside, which I quite like that thing. I also really want to be able to do it in real life. The situation is going terribly, hideously embarrassing myself. I can just delete myself from the scene, and it's all absolutely great. And this, Alex pointed out on the chat, is great for taking toilet breaks without anybody noticing. But I quite like that kind of spell. It's really huge ones because you can manipulate time, essentially what you're doing, and you're directly manipulating the narrative with your magic. But you can use it in really silly ways, like social situations or things like that. You can remove yourself from somewhere you don't want to be.
So an example I've particularly thought of was if a particular NPC turns up who really, really doesn't like your character and will refuse to talk to your party with you being there, you dodge out of the way, and the party can then get on with it.
Or the example he gives here is that, for example, you can go off on a suicide mission and then just disappear off. So you can land, you commit suicide. I like the idea of you make an awkward mess of everything. You're looking to make yourself look really stupid, and then you vanish. But one of the key things is that nobody remembers you were there. So nobody can remember the insults or your embarrassment or hideous mistakes. There's another one as well, actually, which caught my attention. I think it was the first one, actually, in the whole thing. Escharuba had this one. It's a really casual use of spells, kind of low-level magic you can just kind of chuck about, like very low-level telekinesis. So you can play a really lazy wizard, for example, where if you want to light your pipe, you don't reach for your lighter, you go boof and you light it. If you want a cup of tea, you just reach for the mug and it comes flying across the room to get to you. I quite like that kind of thing at the other end of the scale, of just really things you can be lazy with, but is also in itself very useful in other situations. Like, for example, you can unscrew the sight on someone's gun whilst they're not watching, or you can pick locks, or undo people's ties, or tie their shoelaces together, or you've got all kinds of things that are useful kind of in combat, but also just for little bits like the soft roleplay, where you describe, I don't drink my coffee, I just will it into my mouth from the cup.
Sure, there's a Red Dwarf reference there somewhere. Yeah, so they also said like being able to enchant a door to make it shut after a predetermined target walks in. I like that. There's not enough spells like that. Not enough spells that allow you to do things like that. There's obviously open close, but then you have to be in the room and watching the door to be able to cast it. You know,
So
spells like that, like
so you mean
close.
So you mean spells which you can almost program?
Yeah, I'd say.
Because when you say you're setting conditions, that's it's the idea that you can then try and have magic which you can then program the environment immediately around you to then go do stuff under certain conditions. Do this thing, then this thing, if this, then that, and build that into your spells.
I mean, imagine if, for example, you'll need.
Good for a kind of matrix.
Yeah, I imagine, for example, you'll need a sample, say their hair, sweat, blood, because the spell's not going to be able to say, "Oh, well, I know this person." So this person we want you to close on, you know. Going back to Chris, he had a ping for the Soul Leech.
Yes. Yes, the Soul Leech. Sorry, I just managed to lose where it's gone. I had this one. Oh yes, the Grimsilver. That was it. But yeah, this is he's suggesting Soul Leech, an alchemical creation, a bit of necromancy involved, and it's a pill or liquid that can be slipped in someone's food, and then when they consume it, it starts siphoning power from them in some way, and obviously going towards the spellcaster. The reason I like this one is because it's non-combat but plot. The trouble with sort of something like D&D is that it has a lot of combat-orientated spells or spells with a specific function, but it doesn't have sort of things which can be ongoing with an NPC, or possibly with a PC, because I know people who would slip this into a party member's drink. But I just thought it would be very nice, especially a plot device, if a character has been a victim of this, and then they've got to hunt down the person who's done it in order to sort of stop it. So I just like the general idea of it, but also it sort of like ties in also with this whole cookery theme. It's food related again. So actually, maybe there's some whole field of magic about stuff you eat. I sort of don't never mind drink that potion of healing. Eat this cherry pie of healing.
We seem to have accidentally created an entirely new class. If this has to be done. Yeah, I think that's a really very great idea that could be used both ways, as you quite rightly say. There's a couple of spells that I saw in there which I really like. Truth or Dare is a particularly great one. It's exactly as the name implies. You go up to target and say, hey, truth or dare. It's a mind compulsion effect, which means they have to then immediately answer either truth or dare. Which means if you ask them the truth, they have to completely say the truth. The one thing that you ask them has to be answered truthfully, cannot be lied against. I can feel the truth. Or if they get dare, you'll say to them, right, in that case, I dare you to do this. Imagine they'll have to get some form of will save if it's particularly dangerous or threatening to life. That's got a few great concepts for role-playing and, well, mechanical aspects, I suppose. What's the other one I found? There's another one called Disappear, which is very similar to Dodge, but as a targeted spell. You basically place target with touch attack into an extra-dimensional place. They can't attack you, you can't attack them, they are completely safe. It's battlefield control for all intents and purposes. You're facing off against a particularly high-level group of orcs. There's an orc leader. You go to him and go, boop, gone. At which point, then you mop up the rest of the orcs, wait for him to come back. Jobs are good. And of course, will saves all around, I suppose, but hey, it wouldn't be fair if they didn't get a chance to fight against it. I believe Alex had a ping about campaigns.
Yeah, just mainly for the amount of mage chef stuff that's been going around. You probably could just build an entire campaign that is a giant cookery competition, with them using all their mage powers to do the events, but also backstage stuff. You've got stuff running in the background, sabotage going on. You've got all this stuff happening on the stage of the World Iron Mage Chef cookery competition.
Quest to find a rare spice or a certain ingredient. Oh dear God, the possibilities are endless. I believe Alex also had a spell in mind.
Yeah, so from the Reddit one, that was one of the ones I also quite liked, the idea of the summon spice. I also quite liked High Salinity doing Stone to Flesh, which is always an interesting one, especially when he had it paired up with a mage that had max ranks in craft sculpture.
Particularly quite dangerous combination. You turn someone to stone, you then alter said stone, and then turn them back to flesh, I suppose.
Yeah, or he was sculpting things and turning them into flesh. But there was a fun bit underneath from recursing, misreading it as stone to fish, which could also end up having quite a few funny uses.
So,
and one bit that I did come off of someone else talking about stone to mud for crowd control and armies. So stone to mud, bog army down, mud to stone, trap them. And then I suppose you could do stone to flesh to really gross them out, but that would be something entirely different.
David Cronenberg, eat your heart out. So, that generally covers the results we got from Reddit. Has anybody else in particular come up with some spells of their own? Things in the sideboard. Before I ask anyone else, I had an idea for a spell during the day. Now, I tend to have very much a flair for the gigantic and dramatic, so I created the bring down the sky spell, which is a bardic spell, which is particularly a performance-based spell that over a certain amount of turns, when the song just keeps increasing in crescendo. First round, sky darkens. The clearest day can suddenly become like the blackest clouds, and it'll start raining. Second round, lightning bolts, striking X amount of targets or people. Don't know if I'm going to have that one random, because I feel that as a very high level spell that needs some drawbacks, so it could target random people. And the final round, meteors. It's a high level combination of several spells. Imagine something you can only use a couple of times a day. And Alex had an idea for Wall of Force.
Yeah, this was just mainly one transferred for some stuff I'd done for something else. Wall of Force projects a, I don't know, say 6 foot by 6 foot barrier in front of the caster where the caster's gesturing. Mainly had something like that used by someone else who, while they would normally be in a protective role, decided to take it offensively and started punching people in the face with force fields. It could also be used if you need impromptu bridges, if you need to give yourself a boost up in the air.
Very fair point. Very multi-useful spell again. Going beyond the constraints of it just creates a block here and here. So you get sort of just multi-purpose, really. It just seems to be going back to something we said earlier, very much the theme we seem to be going on. Players seem to want a lot more flexibility when it comes to spells. Chris had an idea for Summon Toilet.
Yes, this is a working title for the spell. But I was thinking about, we're talking about a lot of this sort of like, flexible magic, also some of it quite low-level magic, the whole thing about lighting your pipe and stuff like that. And one of the things you want to do as a GM or as a writer to really make the world come alive, if you want a really magical world, is you've got to make the little things magic, the mundane things. We take for granted cell phones and smartphones and all the rest of it, and that's just magic, but it's so normalized. So when I was thinking, well, what's the most normal, mundane thing? And I didn't want to just say food again, so I went sort of like the opposite end of the process. And I thought, well, if you're out in the field, you've got to go somewhere. If you're on an expedition. Also, we all know medieval cities were horrible places, historically. If you're in a magical society, surely somebody is going to come up with a better solution than chucking it out the window. Yeah, so it was. I think I don't know quite what it would actually be, but just something along those lines for dealing with human waste.
It finally answers the age-old question: where did the players go to the loo?
Yeah, exactly.
It's driven me around the bend a bit, that one. I believe Jay had Animate Object.
Yeah, just before because summon a toilet. Of course, that means it's obviously going to be some kind of planar shift or gate at the base of it. So it does mean you end up with a plane. There's another plane somewhere that is very unhappy with our plane of existence, and there's a problem for you. The world started summoning toilets, and then suddenly things started coming back out of the toilets because they've had enough, literally, of our shit. But to get onto my actual point, Animate Object. Mark ran a Pathfinder campaign at the weekend, and we had the hardest fight we had of the entire weekend when one of the NPCs enchanted or animated an oar. And we really needed the oar because we were using it to row the boat we were in. So we didn't outright destroy it. So we ended up trying to grapple and fight this thing. I think one character ended up in the water, 2 characters ended up knotted up in their own equipment after a failed grapple check, and the wizard in question who started the fight got spanked and beaten around the face by this thing. So I think there's plenty of scope in Animate Object to have a lot of power because it's a very subtle, low-level spell that you can use for an awful lot of effect. Because you can use it for humor, you can use it to quite rapidly punish someone. It's also because it's quite a low-level spell and doesn't normally do it a lot of damage. You can use it to chastise people without just starting throwing fireballs around, which is what Mark's NPC did when we started throwing insults at this druid. So I think it works. Animate Object is a very good example of a simple spell with significant power.
Fantastic. Going very briefly back to Chris.
Yeah, I was just I like that idea of the animate object, and we mentioned also the ability to program magic, so it does certain things or certain people. So I just thought, if you, I can't, one about Disney things, but is it Beauty and the Beast where all the cupboards come to life and things like that? And I was thinking, well, with your house, you live in the house of the wizard, your cupboard comes up to you and gives you the robes to wear today and things like that. So that's all utility magic, but then there's great scope for things going wrong. If your wardrobe has a bug in it, figuratively rather than literally, then it's sort of a seed for an adventure. So I just thought I'd throw that one in.
Love it. It's like wrong trousers meets Fantasia. And finally, going to Kieran for the Soul Source.
Yeah, I wasn't sure when I first thought about it. I've had it in my mind for a while, like months, of how do you do this kind of idea of magic driven by, fueled by, and maintained by the souls. Not just of your own, but of people or animals around you, sort of kind of like a druid, but in a different direction altogether. Be able to siphon off the energy of living people, living animals, but also from ghosts and spirit entities to actually fuel magical effects. So it has a wide area you can affect into, but you actually need to actually drain it out of them first to do something with it. You can't just hocus pocus your way through it all. So you've got to be very careful about how you use it. You've got to be very resourceful. And I'm all about that kind of style of magical gameplay, because if it's simple case of you pick up your book, you learn your spells, you walk and start blasting away, it's kind of boring and predictable. You have to actually think about what you're doing with it and think about how you're going to get the energy in without really anyone noticing, and using it to do something else that's constructive without wasting. It creates a much more interesting strategical idea how you use magic.
Yeah, the Necromantic Druid certainly sounds like an interesting subversion. I mean, you're worshipping not just nature, but you're worshipping the other side, essentially. Potentially very, very useful for, again, many utilities. I went wrong a bit. Mark, Steal Magic.
Yeah, I think a very handy spell would be the ability to steal spells off other people, and particularly if you've got like a character class system or a spell list where everyone's got different kind of spells available to them. Then being able to kind of act outside of your class by lifting spells off other people would be a very handy thing to be able to do. Kind of it's not quite a mimicking thing, more or less, but you can act outside of your own archetype, and also can give you the ability to really interfere with other casters. So it's a real kind of anti-wizard spell.
Could it be an opposed spellcraft check if we're using Pathfinder terms? Whoever gets higher then gets to use said spell.
Yeah, or someone casts a spell, you go, brilliant, I'll have that instead. So someone casts a fireball, you can just catch it and send it off again to somebody else. Or you look at someone and go, he's got these spells, I'll have that one, and that one, please.
Nice, love it. As Chris has quite rightly pointed out, an advantage will let you use other players' advantages. So.
Yeah, so it's kind of a mimicking effect.
Or, as Alex has pointed out, a mimic or mime class. Class that doesn't necessarily use its own magic, but is designed to fight other spellcasters by literally stealing their spells.
Well, you can either mimic them, or you can actually take it from them. Because they're different things. I copy your ability to throw fireballs, or I steal the ability to throw fireballs. You can't, and I can.
As Chris has pinged for a Mimecaster.
Yeah, just Mines, I mean, everyone hates them, so this is a very good reason to put one in the game so you can play one and annoy everybody else. But a mime caster, where your magic powers are very loosely defined, but if in order to have a magical effect, you have to mime it out. So I don't know, if you want to do a fireball, you have to sort of like go boom or something like that, or if you want to trap another person, you have to do the whole prison mime thing. It just strikes me as a sort of like it'd probably make a good convention game because I think convention players would go for that sort of character, but it would get very irritating around your normal table.
Definitely a one-shot character. Fantastic. Seems to be we've got a very, very good series of responses today. Do we get any other responses from the other social media?
No, I don't believe we did actually. I think clearly Reddit was the place for this thread.
So, in that case, we see one thing we definitely need to take out of this is flexibility for lower level spells. I'm now going to pass back to Chris for next week, and then on to Alex for the pluses and deltas.
Thank you, Josh. So yeah, next week, what do we want to do next week in our brainstorming is the simple question. Has anyone got an answer? No. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, I'm just going to keep doing 66 magic stuff until someone comes up with something they do want to do. Alex, you might save us from more magic.
I wasn't going to be save you from magic. It's more, I think, perhaps so much of it came up for the cook class mage. If you wanted to try and develop that a little more.
Yeah, I mean that's actually not a bad plan. I mean, we could next week actually get a bit more crunchy and actually put together some paths or talk about some of the problems implementing or some of the solutions to implementing some of these things. Because I think it'll be something like that meta one where you skip out the whole scene and people forget you. I mean, that was a very interesting mechanical question of how would you actually do that. So we could do that. Kieran, have you an idea for next week?
I was thinking of this. I mean, we're talking a lot about using utility spells and sort of using greater expanse of how you look at them and how you can use them in situations, more variety. Why don't we look at trying to make, sort of between each of us, sort of a caster that is all about having a larger mixture of utility spells, stuff based on a theme, like the cooking maze, the mime caster, an animator specialist kind of thing. Just looking at building a class is more about more flexibility and more style of how they can use their magic in more wide varieties than just the normal kind of mage build. I think that would be interesting to see. What kind of ideas we come up with in that direction?
Yeah, because that's an interesting challenge because the problem is you can go one way and have lots and lots of utility spells, which in terms of 66 or even like D&D, it means you have a long spell list, and that's a pain in the arse. If you go the other way and just say have one general you can do magic advantage or spell, it's way too vague. So actually writing a magic spell which sort of like allows you to do stuff but has enough flexibility but isn't abusable, it's quite an interesting challenge. So yeah, that one's a good idea. Jay?
I was going to say, based on what you were saying, Chris, things, but I will put my vote behind Kieran's one because I think it would be a good one we can get stuck in. Let's try and come up with 9 advantages for a utility mage path, or just put together stuff like that. I think that also frames a better question than how would you implement utility spells in 66. One of the reasons we got such a good response today from Reddit is because we posted quite a light general question, and then people just basically almost started talking about what their favourite spells were. Which almost invariably, pleasingly, what I like about the Reddit, RPG subreddit, appears to be these are people who are on it like spells that are fun and flexible. Not, because people just say Fireball, Storm of Vengeance, Ice Storm. Then just the classic explosion spells. They quoted the spells they've used to solve problems in a creative way, because that's generally more fun than just whoosh bang 60 points of damage. So I think the creation of a utility path, or we to put it on Reddit, we'd rephrase it as a utility magic class.
Yeah, it does seem to be very Pathfinder heavy or D&D heavy, isn't it? So
yeah, so we basically we want to create a utility magician. What kind of things do you think a utility magician should have?
Yeah, I think I'd expand that to sort of like, rather than utility, I might go everyday magic. Magic which makes your life easier, or possibly somebody else's life easier. So, yeah, that low-level utility, everyday magic. I think we can frame a nice question around that one. So, and no one's got any objections. That's going to be the topic for next one. Oh, Alex.
Yeah, I was just saying to phrase it, magic of convenience.
Excellent, yeah.
Your convenience spells.
Yeah, I think that nicely sums it up. It's not about power or combat, it's about convenience. So yeah, I think the magic of convenience, is an excellent thread. So does anyone want to volunteer to write up next week's post and lead the conversation? Or shall I just pick someone? Oh, okay, Jay has suggested rolling for it. There are 6 of us, and I inevitably will have a D6. Just for reference, hang on, I'm going to dice roll app. We should do this properly and make it fair. Okay, for reference, Jay is number 1, Josh is number 2, Kieran is number 3, Mark is number 4, Alex is number 5, and I'm number 6. And then I shall roll 1D6. And it's a 2. So, Josh, well done. Well volunteered. Yeah, so that's it. If you could write that out as early as possible and we'll sort of circle it around. I think that's great. We've got a plan for next week. I'm going to hand over to Alex to do some pluses and deltas.
Yeah, so I think for my plus, I think was going to be one that comes up a lot. We have got a very good reaction off Reddit, especially seeing as it was only up for a little bit today. Which I think may also be the delta, that things really only went up because before the meeting was scheduled, so we didn't maybe get as much input from other people as possible.
Yes, you're spot on, and that was my bad. So yeah, I think they're both good ones.
Yeah. So if we go from my screen, pass it over to Mark next.
Pluses. Good fun conversation, really, going through all the different kind of fun things you can do with magic, and complicated a few nice new ideas for magic, and particularly the focus on utility magic rather than the whiz bang stuff. Also, another plus is whilst I was talking about the conditional for setting conditions of magic and then thinking about programming it, which gave me an idea for kind of a matrix-y type setting where you can reprogram the world around you rather than doing magic. But it's probably been done before that. Deltas. Nothing immediately springs to mind, actually. I think I'm quite happy with this. Delta. I didn't put the Facebook thing up on Facebook when it got passed around because I got home late and I forgot to do it, and I suck, and I'm sorry. Delta, I will put it up properly next time.
Okay. So passing on to Kieran.
I think the major plus is going to be, sort of, as Alex said, it's going to be about the massive response to Reddit and seeing the fact that everyone sort of thinks the same kind of way. It's all about the fun flexibility spells more than the big whiz-bang spells, as Mark said. It's nice that a lot of people sort of feel the same way about it. I think as a delta for me is the fact that I can't be here more regularly. So I come in, so 2-3 weeks go past and I've missed things I've been I wanted to get involved in, just can't be there for it.
Alright, handing over to Josh.
Pluses, not to kick an already dead horse, but Reddit has shone for us immensely. for such a short amount of time that I put that up. I will try, technical difficulties pending, of course, to get that thread up on the Thursday morning instead of the Friday afternoon. To give more time, allow more time for responses. Deltas, crap week at work, rain, and that's about it really. I can't really fault anything that happened tonight, apart from, I think it was Mark who was telling the story of the ore, or Kieran, and who was it? Who was telling the story of the ore? Sorry, my brain's not here currently. Jay, that's completely wrong. Almost breaking me. Gee, thanks. Last thing I want to do is like start giggling like a little schoolgirl in the middle of the meeting. Professionalism, yo.
And on that note, passing over to Jay.
Yeah, happy things, happy Reddit, happy Reddit, happy Reddit, happy Reddit. It makes for happy meetings because we get lots of juicy ideas and really got us stuck in all sorts of things. On a negative, it appears Alex has a really nasty cough.
That's right. Did I manage to mute it in time?
You did.
Oh, good. Didn't manage to deafen everybody. So, Chris, what have you got for pluses and deltas?
My plus is Kieran's here. It's always fun when Kieran's here because it's not only just an extra face and not only extra familiar face, but Kieran always brings his own ideas and distinct from everyone else. So it's great to see you back, and work allowing, I hope we'll see you again soon. My delta, it's something I think we need to get a little bit better at, is I found this conversation when we were talking about the spells and things like that, but lots of times I just wanted to chip in, a single statement, or, a single word, or, something very brief, and the ping system does handicap that. But if we don't use the ping system, we all end up talking over each other. So maybe we can think about ways we can sort of go with that.
We could always add the word quick to the front of it, so we've got quick ping for a very quick note rather than a full-on point to be made.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. We could just have a signal, something very, very easy and quick, easy to type or something, and then just a quick bang, and that will do. Yeah, quick ping, that will do. So so if someone's just got a very brief comment, we'll just fire off something, and the person who's running it can just come to it. Like Jay's got something on melons.
I really like melons.
Thank you, Jay, for your contribution.
Would it not be just to have the word quick, so it's not longer to type the quick thing than it is to type the wait and big thing?
Yeah, just let's go for a quick. Yeah, so anyone who pings quick, it's just a single brief statement, and we want to get them in as quickly as possible. So no, that's good. So that was my delta, and we've got a positive change out of it. So that's also my plus. Is that everyone, Alex? I lost track.
I think that's everyone gone through, and that's everyone with their pluses and deltas. So I think it's handing back to you for close up at the end.
Brilliant. Bang on 8 o'clock. Thank you, everybody. This has been a great meeting. I've really enjoyed it. We had some wonderful ideas. Thank you, Reddit. You have delivered you on my new favourite friend. So we will be back next week at 7 o'clock Friday, UK time, and we'll be talking about the magic of convenience. Until then, have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, all.
See you.